I became a deacon because I have a lot of energy and I like to get things done. But also because I'm really fascinated with the Gospels, and the Gospel of John is absolutely my favorite. I love to wrestle with its strange circular logic and its repetitive, dense language. It's poetic, really, and sometimes it's eerie. The high priestly prayer, part of which we heard today, is certainly all that. Repetitive, circular, dense, but it's also amazing. It's amazingly timeless. Sometimes the scripture can be perplexing or seem indecipherable, and every now and then you may wonder how timely it is. You may wonder how relevant it is to your life. Okay, well, maybe nobody in this church thinks that, but I've thought that on occasion. But today I would like to talk about this scripture with you as something which is even more alive today than it was when it was written. When I read it, it makes me shiver because it sounds like it was written from the future. So for instance, when you hear, all mine are yours and yours are mine, and I have been glorified in them, and now I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you, you might start to think that John is saying that Jesus is going to some other place, presumably heaven, presumably where God is, which is maybe up or out or down, but another place, like Portland is a place. You might wonder what it means to say that Jesus is glorified in people. And the old interpretation of this gospel would go along the lines of this. Jesus is ascending to another place kind of like earth, but not earth, like space, but not space, and leaving people with the memory of him. These ideas include the idea of God as a fixed, remote, powerful force who isn't able or willing to share the life of God's creation. And sometimes there's still even the idea at this late date that God controls what happens in the life of creation. So there's this idea that God decided to rescue humanity, sent Jesus, instructed Jesus to die, and then allowed Jesus to be resurrected, after which Jesus returned to that remote place where God the Creator is. And if all of that were true, it would have meant that we were stuck here, still waiting, without any way of pushing things along. It would mean that our impact on God is minimal, having God out there in that remote place untouched by human life. Since the church and the rest of the world really believed that for a long time, that Jesus has somehow left the world and gone to another place in a way that we used to understand place, and could not still be living here with us except through some kind of, divine manipulation, the church instituted all kinds of guidelines that we could follow. And if we follow them, then we could be guided right into heaven at the end of all time, at the end of all personal time. But that idea that we could wait here until things way outside our knowledge or impact happen, and that somehow we would then be transported elsewhere to a place called heaven, we know that that is not how things work. Now, thousands of years later, we understand that nothing dies into nothingness. Energy is always conserved. Our bodies may decay, but our matter is preserved in the earth, and our energy is consumed by our world. And thus we move evolution along. Now we can understand, especially in this gospel, that Jesus is talking about a father, or should I say a father-mother, who is with us in every breath we take, a creator whose love, whose passionate, self-giving love seeks to be understood by us, seeks to be loved by us, seeks to be one with us. When Jesus entered this earth, he entered our time, which is not God's time. But when Jesus died and rose, God entered this time with us as well. God entered our time, which our time begins and ends, and so things change. We change from the beginning of our time to the end of our time, which results in massive change. And that means that God is changing with us. What if Jesus was talking like a quantum physicist in the gospel and meant that he, having taken on a human form, was giving each of us some real part of himself through his death? I mean, you know, we're all breathing molecules and absorbing particles of everyone who's ever walked on the earth and died. We know that now. So we're breathing the molecules and live in the particles of Einstein and Hitler and Mother Teresa and our grandparents and the dinosaurs. But to do that with Jesus is to do it with God. Jesus says to the Father, protect them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one as we are one. He says, in other words, give these people some part of yourself, your name as you have given it to me, because I, Jesus, share your divinity, so that they may be as connected to each other as we are connected. So if people get Jesus, they get the Creator. And if they get the Creator, they are part and parcel of each other. There is no part of Jesus that is not part of the world we live in. There is no part of us that is not part of Jesus in real and lively ways. So in the past several weeks, we have heard over and over the command to love one another as Jesus has loved us. This love is not the kind of Christian charity which we are asked to do because it's the right thing to do to get into heaven. And it's not the thing that we've talked about that has to do with assuaging our guilt or improving our image, or even just because it makes us feel good. It's what we do because we believe that everything we do matters in the lives of everyone else. That is what we hear in this gospel. We are one. We are one in love. There is one love, and that is God, and we come from that love. Nothing we do in love, then, is wasted. We know that the world needs all the love we have, all the passion, all the imagination, all the energy to make something new now. The moral and social decay wrought by hundreds of years of slavery and racial oppression is rendering apart the ground we walk on. The alienation and isolation of the pandemic has brought us to our knees in grief. The hatred of divisive politics and the absence of regard for the common ground is dissolving the fabric of the nation. We need love. This gospel of John, calls us to open our hearts in humility to God's passionate love for us. It begs us to allow ourselves to be vulnerable to that love which is a huge ferocity that never ends, and to pour that love all over each other, in the words of Desmond Tutu, for as long as we can, whenever we can. Maybe we learn from the pandemic about how connected we are and about how much love is needed to move forward toward wholeness and healing. Maybe we learned something about self-denial as a form of love, about bravery and commitment and deep vulnerability as love. God is on the move in us. And if we can bear to accept it, we can show the world how to heal. Vladimir Lossky, an Eastern Orthodox theologian, said that God is a beggar of love, waiting at soul's door without ever daring to force it. May we find the courage to open that door.